I call the April 25th meeting, work session meeting of the Portsmouth City Council to order. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cherry?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mrs. Lucasberg? Here. Mr. Moody? Ms. Simmons? Here. Dr. Whitaker? Mayor Rowe?
Here.
Thank you.
Well, it's our great pleasure and honor to welcome our General Assembly delegation to our meeting. And it's like a bookend. We met with you before the session started, and you all really worked hard for the city of Portsmouth and the citizens, and we thought it would be very appropriate to, now that the session is over and the veto session, is to meet again and talk about and give us a chance to thank you for the hard work that you did on behalf of the citizens of our great city. And so welcome again. It's our honor and pleasure that you're here. And we'll start with our senior member of our delegation, Senator Louise Lucas, and thank you for everything that you did. I think it was pretty awesome that the session's not even a week old, and here we are having an audience with the governor.
Absolutely. Well, that was easy. When you called and asked me to set up the meeting with the governor to talk about the issues impacting the city of Portsmouth, I was happy to run across the Capitol grounds and tell him that this was very important and that we all needed to meet with you. And as a result of that meeting, all of the delegation was there. And I think it was especially important that you and other members of the city council and the management team came up to help us to lobby for especially the $1.7 million for the 3 years in the budget to make sure that we were not going to be caught with maybe having to increase taxes, because we were able to bridge that gap and infill the budget with that $1.7 million. And so it was all of us working together. I don't want anybody to think that it was any one of us. I think it was all of us working together, because I know the House had the $1.7 million in the budget there, and of course we held the line. So on the last day we were able to keep that money in the budget. And so we're happy about that.
And we are too.
So are we.
We are.
And it took a lot of behind-the-scenes working in the hallways and ante rooms, in addition to just doing it every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we've not seen this level of commitment on the part of the city in a long time. To see so many members of the city council, and I think all of you can agree, the delegation will agree, it's been over 10 years since we've had this many members of the city council and the management team to come up to help us to lobby for legislation, and so that was a good sign. So I think that was encouraging to the governor and to other members in the budget, in the money committees.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think it would be appropriate to say that Portsmouth will be heard from, not only in the 2017 session, but in the sessions in the future. And
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Is there any summary that you would like to give about the session?
Well, I think each one of us, and I'll just let my other colleagues weigh in a little bit. You know, each year we go into the session with legislation that we think will improve the quality of life for people that we represent. I personally carried 20 bills, and I think I was lucky to get the 3 that I got out. And we are delighted to carry the legislation that the city gives us to carry. The one bill that I got through that the city gave me to carry was the one with about the regional jails, with us being able to have the community services boards come into a memorandum of understanding, so that an individual who has been committed, if they have already been adjudicated incompetent in terms of having some mental health issues, that they're going to be able to continue to get the mental health services that they need, whether it's from the city of Portsmouth or the city of Chesapeake. The services ought to track the individual. So I'm really happy about getting that bill passed. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here from the city of Hampton. But I do represent a portion of Portsmouth, and I'm pleased that I do. I'd like to talk a little bit about the budget that passed, and sorry that the governor's recommendations to the budget weren't passed in the veto session, because he had some really good recommendations to improve the budget, but they did not get out of House with our colleagues. We were prepared to do so in the Senate. But the budget that did pass was a very good budget in terms of recommending raises for state employees, including law enforcement and teachers and professors in higher education. So that was good. And it did close the budget gap. That was last year. There was all kind of doom and gloom that had been projected, but we were able to close that considerably with no kind of cuts being made to K through 12, which was excellent. So we were pleased about that, and there was an infusion of money into mental health care. So we were pleased with that. I didn't introduce as many bills as my colleague, but even with that, I still only managed to get 2 out. And one of those was for the city of Portsmouth, which dealt with Virginia residential property disclosure, and requiring disclosure for local historic districts. And that came out of an issue that happened here in the city of Portsmouth, so that there will be those disclosures, so individuals won't be making changes to properties in historic districts, understanding that they shouldn't be doing that, and putting in thousands and thousands of dollars, making changes, and then having to go back and undo what they did in an historic area. So that has been, that will be changed come July 1. And another change was made to the Fort Monroe Authority Board. And currently, members of the governor's cabinet sit on that board, and that will no longer be the case because those cabinet officials simply were not able to make the board meetings. So those will still be gubernatorial appointments. It just will not be cabinet officials sitting on the board. So that will become effective July 1 as well. So that's my update.
Thank you. Delegate James.
Good evening. Trying not to be redundant, I'm going through my notes. But it's my pleasure to be here. I think we had a great session when it comes to Portsmouth and the other 3 cities. We were able to give raises. It's already been talked about. I will join the senator in commending the council. And coming up, it was funny when I presented the companion bill that you were there. The chair looked out and saw Senator Lucas. Very rarely do we get senators and delegates supporting each other bill in person. And his comments were, "That's not fair." And you guys are with him. So I think we've made some friends. I think we, in terms of some leeway to leverage the strengths to have a lot of us on different committees. I think importantly, in addition to helping with the short-term 1.7 million gap, I think, well, 5.1 million, I should say, over 3 years at 0% interest.
That's right.
And that was really critical. At 0% interest, we were able to put that in language, and it passed. But I think we also made some traction in the study that was not passed because they decided to do no more studies, is that we'll look at the financial reimbursement or support for host cities. And I think we can reintroduce that bill and maybe have some more money coming in or support, because we had the 3 support of the 3 cities, but we also picked up the inland port up in Richmond and up in Winchester. We talked about mental health. We talked about the raises. Importantly, we were proud on the House side that we were able to sustain 100% of the governor's vetoes. He was 110 to nothing. And so we were able to hang together and sustain, because if one of us would have defected, we would have gotten that phone call from the governor's office saying, "What were you doing?" But that's an inside joke there. We also was happy to go back to fully funding, or at least getting close to it, for the Go Virginia initiative. I want to thank Mayor Rowe for coming to. We had in Hampton Roads our skill gap analysis that my day job was partnering with Opportunity Inc., where it identified the growing job jobs that we have to focus on. The next step is we'll start to make applications for grants, in which I think we funded them for about $25 million over the next year or so. But now that's statewide money, so it's not that much money. But we want to make sure that Portsmouth gets a piece of that.
Absolutely.
In terms of individual bills, in addition to the study, two of the bills that I was interested in that were passed, I got Steve, they were joking me in our House caucus meeting, I was one of the first Democrats to get bills out of the House. They killed everybody. They either stole them or they killed them. So I don't know, maybe I was living right. But so I got a economic development bill passed that basically talks about if two or more cities get together with a contiguous site, the state will help support their infrastructure development. And the other bill, I think, was a common, what I call a plain sense bill. We have a lot of veterans in this area. We have a lot of people who've gone through apprenticeship programs. This bill will enable anyone who went through an apprenticeship program that's certified. They will now get college credit for what they learned in the apprenticeship program. So they won't have to go back to school as a freshman. They can go at no cost to them to get that associate's degree. And with that, that's my report.
Delegate Heritage. Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, members, batting cleanup, I don't get to say any of the good stuff. But I will tell you that, I think that working together with the other members of the delegation has been incredibly rewarding. And I can, echo my colleague's sentiment that something I did not know where I sat on your side of the table was exactly how important it is for members of council and you, Mr. Mayor, and members of city staff to come up, to be seen, to be heard. And I can tell you that made, at least from my perspective, an awful lot of difference this year. I was looking at the legislative priorities that you gave us back in October, and I can tell you that going down the list, I think we brought home a good bit of this. As Matthew mentioned, the JLARC studies, which were requested, they all died this year. So I don't think anybody got anything more than we did. But in terms of the other legislation, especially the bills dealing with the tragic death of Jamichael Mitchell here in the regional jail,
Right.
I think there were about 13 different pieces of legislation overall. Every last one of them passed. I think all of us introduced a number of those bills. I did two.
I did
I
too.
got one out in my name. I got one out as chief co-patron when a committee chairman, no less, liked the bill better than I did and put his name on it first. But like I told him at the time, it's not important who gets the credit for it. It's important that we protect those that we are attempting to serve. And so I was proud of that result. Just going down the list, historic rehabilitation tax credits were protected in finance this year. I think we did well. Now, obviously, we have a lot of work to do. But I think that, it's been referenced before, I think especially the issue with the tax issue with the ports coming as a surprise like it did. We all weighed in, we got it addressed, and I think it was productively resolved. And, I can tell you that I'm reasonably proud of the product that we all were able to turn in for the city. And I would certainly invite, as my colleagues will, any questions you might have about what we did. But I think all in all, we got a lot of what we came for.
If I could just mention, Matthew reminded me about vetoes. We had 14 governor's vetoes of Senate bills. And we have a bit more of a safety net in the Senate than the House does, so much so that the Senate Majority Leader took ours up in a block because he knew that,
Saves time.
that there was no way that,
Half a day.
he was not going to, that there was no way that they would be able to separate them and be able to have any one of these overridden. So he just took them up in a block.
I think there was one piece of legislation that passed that is of interest to students, perhaps. I did introduce a bill that would, and Jawan Ward got her bill passed, that would put into the public school education for driver's education, how to deal with law enforcement if you get stopped, because a lot of times our young people don't really know how to respond when they're stopped by a police officer. So that's going to be included in the curriculum now. And hopefully students will know that when they're approached by a police officer, first thing to do is don't make any real quick and sudden moves and don't be reaching for things that you don't need, and it's just going to be a litany of things. There will be do's and don'ts that will go into the driver education programs now that will help students, and of course, as usual, and I normally introduce marijuana bills, not to legalize. I keep trying to tell people this is not to legalize marijuana, it's to decriminalize marijuana. And the rationale behind it is that you have some segments of the society, of the community, who get harsher punishment when they're caught with marijuana than others. And so one of the bills that did pass would now...
There were 17 marijuana bills.
17
and
marijuana.
2 passed.
And 2 passed, right. And the one bill that passed will allow a person to keep their driver's license if they get caught with, and I don't know whether you want to call it
5 grams.
5 grams. That's not quite recreational, but if you get caught. But at least you will be able to keep your driver's license so you can go to work. What happens is that once a person makes a mistake, there's a double whammy. It's like a two-edged sword. Then now you don't have a driver's license, you can't go to work, you can't keep your job, you can't take care of your family. What kind of justice is that? So my bill was rolled into another study for decriminalizing marijuana. And again, I want to say not legalizing, but decriminalizing marijuana. And so I think we're going to be making some headways in that respect. As you all know, my casino bill died again, but
Got close, though.
got close. Came out of the
Got
Senate
2
by
more votes.
Got 2 more votes and came out of the Senate by a short 1 vote. And but never fear, I'll be back again next year.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just add one more thing to link all of this that we had done, I think that while we didn't solve everything, the strength that we showed and you all coming up was, there's no coincidence between that and the governor getting active and coming down here and doing the work that he did on the tolls.
Yep.
I think he said he saw a strong delegation. The Secretary of Transportation, for example, would joke with us about every time we saw him, we said, "What are you doing about tolls?" Remember, he walked up to me and said, "I'm working on it."
Yes.
Put that pressure on him.
You had legislation about the tolls.
Well, the challenge with the legislation was, I don't agree with this because obviously I was carrying the bill, but I was told they were sympathetic. We are now the poster child for what not to do in public-private. And in addition to asking us before you put it on the citizens that we represent, but they were worried about the precedent. That's what they told us. So it did make me feel good. Senator Lucas was in some of the meetings when I just said, and they all told us we're passionate, we understand, but they were worried about the precedent of the legislation. But what I've been telling constituents is we did get response. We did get some, what I call traction. We can come back and continue. None of us, at least I'll speak for me, we are not satisfied as long as that toll is there. We want to eventually get rid of it. But we did get some changes. I think we motivated the governor to come down and do what they did. They heard us, and they will continue to hear us. That's my commercial.
And the fact that the governor was here in Hampton Roads twice in a 1 month period with all the other places he has to go all across the state, I think speaks volumes.
And what he said to the company, there's no surprise that within 24 hours they called him. Now, these are people that I know we called. They wouldn't come back and talk to us. They would give somebody else the return phone call. They called the governor back and said, let's sit down and talk.
And caught a plane from Australia and came to Virginia.
They wanted to talk.
And I would note, just if I could follow on Matthew's comments, I put a toll collection reform bill myself, and at least in front of transportation, it was shot down initially because while I could tell various stories and put different examples on some of the abusive toll collection practices, the committee was concerned that we didn't have a lot of statistics to back that up. If you'll notice at the very end of the budget bill that Chairman Chris Jones of Suffolk put in, he specifically added language requiring all the toll collection facilities in the state to provide the data that the committee was requesting so that when the bill comes back next year, we will have objective results from all the toll collection facilities in Virginia to support that. And I think that that is an important bit of support that we've gotten from our colleague in Suffolk who chairs appropriations. I think that's a very important aspect of what we're doing.
Well, we greatly appreciate the tenacity that you all have. I mean, the legislative process is not just one session. It's like building a brick foundation, and you put one layer in, and you're quite good at doing that, and then come back and do another layer. And pretty soon, we get the whole foundation.
Right.
We really appreciate that. To my colleagues, do you have any questions or comments? Well, again, thank you so very much, and I speak for all of council for the hard work that you put in. Sherry Neal's going to brief us on the impact of the federal budget cuts, and you're welcome to stay for that. I don't want to impose on your time, but we're being treated pretty shabbily, particularly in the way of community development block grant. But keeping, again, at the state level, and it's just not the session, we really appreciate what you do during the whole course of the year. Picking up the telephone, calling the governor, calling the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Finance, whatever. Thank you for your hard work.
Well, absolutely. Is there anything in this presentation that we need to know that will prepare us for next year?
It's a short presentation, so if you could stay,
Okay.
All right,
we
well,
would appreciate it.
Let's go to the next item then.
And we could also use your help. Are we ready? Okay, good evening, Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor I'm sorry.
No, he's already introduced you.
Oh, you didn't have,
Usually I have a statement, but
Okay, so good evening, Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Cherry, members of City Council, and our General Assembly delegation. This evening, I'm sharing with you items that the staff has identified in President Trump's 2018 skinny budget that, if approved, will have deleterious impact to this city and other fiscally stressed municipalities. The items outlined in this presentation were taken directly out of the America First, a budget blueprint to make America great again. This budget outline is requesting a $54 billion increase in defense spending for 2018, offsetting this increase with targeted reductions elsewhere. The programs listed in this presentation are some that have been identified as failed programs with no proven track record that should be eliminated. And that was a statement made by Mr. Mulvaney, who's the Director of Office Management and Budget. We disagree with this assessment and have highlighted in this presentation how these programs have helped the city and our citizens, as well as how their elimination will impact us. So in this first slide, you see we begin with the proposed federal cuts. The first one is for the CBDG and home programs. At Council's meeting last night, Mr. Clymer presented information on this CBDG and home programs. Due to our fiscally stressed status, Portsmouth is an entitlement city. We receive funding without having to apply or compete for these dollars. Although these two programs had been on the federal chopping block before, each time they were saved. Advocates want the programs to be reformed, opponents want them to be eliminated. The problem with these programs are that over the years, funding has sharply declined, while a number of places taking money from the pot, the shrinking pot has risen. Critics of the program point to this and argue that there are weakened programs, that they make little impact, and sometimes aids wealthier communities that don't need help. The Urban Institute recommends changing the eligibility rules so that this funding would be spread across fewer communities, providing greater assistance to low and moderate income neighborhoods, and in doing so with better targeting, funding overall should increase. As Mr. Clymer pointed out last evening, our city has judiciously used this funding to develop housing, provide rental assistance, provide down payment assistance, rehab assistance for our elderly homeowners, created supported housing units for homeless persons, as well as the numerous other projects that have benefited our citizens and our city. Losing these funds would have a significant negative impact on the city. The next one under the Department of Transportation is the elimination of the Tiger Grant. And this is one of the few programs that allows local and county governments direct access to federal funds for transportation and infrastructure projects. This is an important source of potential funding for this city, this region, and our state. Under the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA is facing huge cuts. A particular concern is the elimination of funding for the Chesapeake Bay. The cleanliness of our bay is extremely important for numerous reasons. Cleaning the bay requires reductions in the total daily maximum load, or TDML, which is wastewater runoff discharged into our waterways. For Portsmouth, the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission estimates that just to meet our TMDL goals by 2025, the city's portion is $125 million. Without federal funding in place for this program, more undue burden is going to be placed on municipalities like ours that is under the consent decree agreement. As far as the Clean Power Plan, the climate change programs, Hampton Roads is the second most vulnerable in the United States to the impact of sea level rise and climate change. Therefore, elimination of the Clean Power Plan and the other climate programs are of great concern to us. For the Superfund, they're looking for $330 million in a reduction in there. Any decreases in this pot of money will impact our ability, possibly, to secure funds from the Superfund. And as such, it will halt our current cleanup efforts at Burton's Point Road. Next. Under the Department of Homeland Security, they've listed changes to the National Flood Insurance Program, or the NFIP. This program is not just about flood insurance, but total flood risk programs. The community rating system used for floodplain management above minimum requirements provides eligible policyholders a discount on their flood insurance policies. It also makes the community safer through the implementation of floodplain management activities, which in turn increases overall community resilience. The Trump administration wants the user fees for the NFIP restructured, ensuring that the cost of the government services is not subsidized by taxpayers not directly benefiting from the program. We do not agree with this assertion because although one's house or building is not in a flood zone, owners still benefit because roadways, public spaces, etc. impacted by flooding benefit from a locality's ability to conduct floodplain management. The elimination of the NFIP flood hazard mapping program will not have a direct impact on our city because we have been proactive in this area and we received our maps in 2015. However, many communities in the Commonwealth of Virginia have not received their maps yet. The end result is, without flood insurance, costs are solely on the property owner, who may need disaster assistance, which is also proposed to be cut. FEMA. So that takes me to the elimination of FEMA. They're looking for a $667 million cut to that particular program. And many of those grants we have used in our public services for pre- and post-disaster mitigation grants, assistance to firefighters grants, the Urban Area Security Initiative, or otherwise known as UASI. And we have used that particular program to do major upgrades for our public safety communications infrastructure in the tune of over $800,000. And the State Homeland Security Grant, which we have shared with our neighbors for the port. Next one. No, back up, I'm sorry. So now, under the Department of Health and Human Services, the LIHEAP, which is the elimination of the low-income housing energy assistance program. As you can see there, just for Portsmouth in 2016, it was over $800,000 that was used in federal funding for services in our city. For the Hampton Roads region, it was over $10 million. It was $10,762,386 in assistance that has been received. They're looking to take all of that away. Without this support, many people will not be able to maintain heating and cooling expenses. These funds also assist with crisis services and assistance with shut-off notices. Meals on Wheels, as we all know, provides meals to our seniors, which helps to keep them independent as well as helps with their socialization. If they cannot feed themselves, they're at risk of more costly alternative placements. The next one is the Weatherization Assistance Program. They're looking to cut that one out. That one provides funds to install measures that reduce residential heating and cooling costs for low-income families and enhance their health and safety. And of course, we know that they have been trying hard to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. And although the first attempt to repeal and replace this program has been unsuccessful, this matter is still a hot item. In fact, the subsidies provided to the subscribers of this program may be used as a bargaining chip this week, as Congress and the President work to either pass an omnibus budget to cover the remainder of this fiscal year or a continuing resolution to carry the federal government through the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th. One of the offers made to the Democrats in Congress were that if they were to approve funding for the border wall in the continuing resolution, that they would not cut these subsidies from the Affordable Care Act, which is a no-go. Next. And just winding it up, Department of Education, K-12 education funding. Funding here is going to be repurposed. It's not going to be increased. It would be repurposed in favor of creating more charter schools and virtual schools, which means that there will be less money for public schools, which puts a greater burden on the state and local governments. The after-school programs, the Trump administration states that before and after-school programs, as well as summer programs, lack strong evidence of meeting their objectives, such as improving student achievement. So they're all on the chopping block as well. There are numerous studies that counter these arguments, and we know that in Portsmouth, these programs have been extremely helpful to our youth. Portsmouth is not. For the libraries, they're looking for the elimination of the Institute of Museum of Library Services and a $210 million funding cut for Library Services and Technology Act and innovative approaches to libraries. Without these funds, especially for dealing with the museums first, without these funds, small organizations that depend on funding for their organization's programs through these agencies will find it very challenging to meet their budgets. Others, such as the symphony, the opera, etc., that receive funds through NEH and NEA will also be impacted. Many organizations provide programming to students in our Portsmouth Public School and our residents. And then finally, of course, these cuts to the library services are going to be detrimental to our libraries, state and local. That's the end of my presentation. We're hoping that as our members of the state, that perhaps you will reach out to your federal counterparts and kind of help with this, or not let this happen. Any assistance you guys can provide would be greatly appreciated.
Dr. Patton, you want to?
I'm going to add, and there's something that we are waiting for more information. About 2 weeks ago, our police chief was called to a meeting in Richmond with our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. And at that meeting, it was indicated that municipalities will be receiving further instructions and information as to how they are going to be held responsible for being a part of ICE and roundup of
That's a luck with that one.
persons who they deem are in your area or in your region. If you saw this morning's news, you had the mayor of New Orleans on TV, and he was speaking of the fact that pressure is beginning to come from the federal government for them in twofold: the roundup of people and them being the city that shelter sanctuary cities, and that how their federal funding is being deemed to be cut drastically. And the chief has indicated, Dr. Patton, I'm just waiting for additional information that I will bring forward. However, all of this discussion is absent of any funding. They are looking for municipalities to find the funds, the jails to lock the people up, to hold them until further. But that is something that our chief has received information on, and as of Friday, she had not gotten any more information. So this is something else.
We currently cooperate with ISIS.
I'm not ISIS.
She indicated that there had been a total separation in past administration of municipal government, public safety, having anything to do with immigration and dealing with persons who federal government were dealing with and local government. But it seems now there may try to be a drastic shift, but there has not been.
Yes, Steve, if I could interject. Steve had mentioned that several bills that were introduced in the House at least, but we were able to veto all of those bills that sort of, you can.
Yeah, there were a number of bills that were floated both in the House and the Senate this year, which would have created essentially unfunded mandates on the localities to require local law enforcement participation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other federal agencies to essentially do immigration enforcement. And it would have been a tremendous additional cost on localities. All of those bills either died in the House or the Senate or were ultimately vetoed by the governor. So apparently I think the feds are looking to bypass us and put the pressure on the localities directly.
In addition, she indicated that the federal government knows the districts of which cities are in and how the districts vote. That came out in the meeting.
In her meeting?
In her meeting.
What does that mean, how they vote?
Meaning that they know that Hampton Roads is I would say, over the last whatever years, have been a Democratic hold or vote or support. And I shared with the mayor and council maybe about a month ago, Governing Magazine came out with an article of which they have the whole United States mapped out where they're red. And when you looked at this part of Virginia, it was all blue. So there is some mapping of how areas voted and support.
Thank you. Any questions of anybody on Sherry?
Do you want me to address the two questions?
We'll go on with whatever you needed.
The two questions from last night?
Yes.
I was provided with two questions from council's last night meeting that I was asked to address this evening. One of them was, when will we know what the level funding will be from the federal government? And I'm not sure exactly if you're talking about the continuing resolution or the budget. But if it's the continuing resolution, we'll know that when they pass one.
Yeah. Or not.
Or not, yeah. And if it's the budget, it would be the same answer, I would think. And then the other question was about consequences of the continuing resolution, whether or not it's enacted this week. The short and the long of that one would be, if they do not pass a continuing resolution by Friday, the federal government shuts down on Saturday.
That's right.
They will have probably some exemptions for emergency or high-level operations that have to continue on.
With the military.
But the military, yes. But other than that, it'll be closed until they come to some kind of agreement to continue funding the federal government for 2017. I spoke with Mr. David Daly in Congressman Scott's office earlier today about this, and he's his legislative director. He said that the Democrats actually want to pass an omnibus appropriation bill that will take them all the way through the end of this fiscal year 2017. If they were able to do that, he said it might result in a small increase in funding for CBDG and home. However, if it's just level funded and they pass the CR, if they do pass the CR, they'll do its level fund through 17, and then they'll deal with 18. And of course, the border is still an issue. So some people say that the president will now wait till September to deal with it. Others are saying that he's not going to wait. So everything is up in the air.
But didn't he? I heard this morning on the news that he's backed off the wall issue.
This afternoon, Mr. Spicer, in his press conference, said that they are still going after the wall, and then they had a excerpt on, I was listening to CNN and MSNBC, where the president was saying that he doesn't know where they got the idea that he was not going to go, he didn't want this money now. So it's a lot of different conflicting stories going on about what's going on with this funding.
Dr. Patton, not to embarrass Sherry, particularly while the members of the General Assembly are here, but because they're here, I want to, again, talk about the outstanding job that she does, not only for us as members of council, but the city and to our delegation, too.
That's right.
She is a person that knows her way around.
Yes, she
And is there anybody that you don't know in the General Assembly?
Not this year.
Well, and that's because she's been there longer than they have.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
Sherry was there when I got there in 1991.
I was since '89.
So there are not many people left. Maybe the.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much
Well,
for that.
and
I would,
thank you.
if I may, Mayor, I would concur with your and council's recognition of the work of our leader for us in the legislative process. And as Senator Lucas says, Mrs. Neal worked with, was it Senator Maxwell?
Senator Maxwell.
Senator Maxwell for about 13 years, and so she is well versed in the legislative process. And one of the things I like is that when she is away, she's always accessible. She's reaching out to the department heads. She's reaching out to the schools and asking us to get the information back to her so she can go to get it to our delegation that needs it. So we appreciate the work that you're
And
doing.
she's sitting in the audience giving us a thumbs up when we vote right.
I thank you all for that, and I'd like to say it's a pleasure working with you. I have a great leadership here in the city, and I have a wonderful General Assembly delegation that I'm working with, so it's a team effort. So without you guys, I couldn't do what I do, so thank you.
And again, thank you very much. Thank you for coming on.
Like I did.
Buy them a bag of candy next year.
Yeah.
You like the red thing?
Yeah, I like the red and yellow.
Okay, got it.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Good to see
All right, take care.
Squeeze by.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Good to see you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yes, right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, good to see you. All right, young lady.
See you, sir.
I want you to know I stand with you. I think they did them wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? This is for the church, not this stuff.
Dr. Patton.
You go walk right by me. Bring your glass.
Oh, I got lids now.
All right, I think we're ready to resume.
All right.
And we're at budget follow-up from last night.
Yes.
Dr. Patton.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, we have some budget report backs that we'd like to do this evening. One is that the OPEB Trust Fund Council asked that a letter be developed and signed by the mayor to be sent to the school board. And this report back is that the letter has been completed and delivered today to the school board. The second report back, Mrs. Gloria Washington, our budget officer, will present the risk management fund and the proposed city and Portsmouth Public Schools collaborative funding. She doesn't have a PowerPoint. She's talking from her sheet. And the sheet is, you put it in the box. Okay, and they have it. Okay.
And the sheet is entitled City/PPES Collaborative Funding.
Yes.
That is correct.
Does everybody have a copy of that?
Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Cherry, members of City Council. This evening, you have before you a schedule entitled, as Mayor Rowe just alluded to, entitled The City Portsmouth Public Schools Collaborative Funding, Projected FY 2019 Impact of the FY 2018 2% raise for Portsmouth Public School employees. This schedule provides information regarding the following: the amount required for the 2% raise for Portsmouth Public School employees, excluding part-time, grants, temporary employees, and the superintendent of Portsmouth Public Schools, to be effective July 1st, 2017, which we are proposing to be covered by recurring savings in the Combined Risk Management Fund. The savings will occur by combining the city and Portsmouth Public Schools risk management funds and using an average amount of overfunding from prior fiscal years. I will now provide a review of the schedule, which includes the proposed funding for FY 2018, projected for FY 2019 and FY 2020. You will see in the first block of the schedule, you'll see a column that's entitled Proposed FY 2018 Amount Needed, 2% increase to gross salaries of $1,612,545, 2% increase to benefits which excludes health care of $411,016. Total cost of the 2% increase is $2,023,561. And just to note that these figures for the proposed 2018 have come from a liaison meeting from Portsmouth Public Schools. The funding sources, I'm going to go down the column, are state funding for 2% compensation supplements for SOQ, which is Standard of Quality Employees, February 1st, and that's for 5 months. That's $442,249. That raise is proposed to be effective February 1st, 2018. Lottery proceeds from the state of $497,535. Sales tax, $9,407. They're showing a reduction to basic aid of $5,436, other of $533, for a total state funding of $944,288. The request for city funding is $1,079,273 for a total state and city funding of $2,023,561, which again ties back to the total cost of the 2% increase proposed for school employees. I would like to note that staff from the city manager's office called the Virginia Department of Education Finance Unit today to discuss the 2% compensation supplement for the standards of quality funded positions and the best method to project the state funding for recurring compensation supplement for FY 2009, which will be the next column that I talk about. 2019. Based on our conversation, we annualized the 5-month funding, which equates to a full school year of state funding of $1,061,398. So if you go to the column for projected 2019, you'll see that we carried over the same funding amounts of the $2,023,261. The difference that you will see is in the state 2% compensation supplement. That number in 18 was $442,000, but if you annualize that, that was for 5 months. The $1,061,000 would be for 12 months that we should receive from the state, because that would be for a 12-month period. And it's the same amount that we've carried over for 2020. and we carried over the same amounts, being very conservative, from the Portsmouth Public Schools numbers, and that total state funding then becomes $1,563,437 versus the proposed what we have now of $944,288. With that amount still tying back to the $2,023,561, the amount that would be needed for city funding would be $460,124. And that's the same amount we just projected it out another year for 2020. If we go to the lower block, which it says amount needed from the city, we're going again back to the request for city funding in proposed 2018 of the $1,079,273. What we are proposing that there's one-time funding in fund balance in risk management of $1,670,976. And these numbers have been confirmed by our CFO, Alice Kelly, working with our HR Director, Ms. Libby Gooden. We also have an estimated amount overfunded in the risk management fund from prior years that's recurring. We're estimating, and it's a conservative estimate, of $200,000. Then we're also proposing to have an estimated savings from combining the two plans and parameter changes for insurance coverage of $260,124. So for proposed for 18, that totals to $2,131,100. The recurring amount that is part of the $2,131,000 is the $460,124. Again, the amount that was requested from schools to make the 2% whole for the 7-month period from July to February, this would cover that amount. And if you go to your projected 2019 column, you will see that amount needed from the city. Because of the annualized amount for the state funding for the 2%, the amount needed for the city will only be the $460,124 to make the schools whole for their remaining years. I'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Questions?
Pretty good.
This validates and quantifies what you qualitatively said to us last night. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor, and we did meet with Superintendent Bracey and Mrs. Dolch today.
Okay.
And their sheet, which they provided us during the liaison meeting, they validated our numbers are correct. We received, as Mrs. Washington indicated, verification that these dollars, although the state is projecting them from February 1 to the 6-month period of time, in the 19 budget, it would be actualized in the millions, what we have here. So we are confident.
Okay, the summary is that a 2% increase can be given at the beginning of the
July
1st.
yeah,
July 1st, yes.
And
out of the existing funds.
yes.
Yes.
Question. Are you saying that the school system has reviewed this, Ms. Deutsch?
We met with, I myself, Superintendent Bracey, Mrs. Dolch, and Mrs. Washington met today and went over the sheet. Along with the sheet, I don't have their sheet, which when we met with them, the sheet they gave us.
Okay. They were in agreement with this?
They indicated, as Dr. Bracey mentioned yesterday, their board will not meet until Thursday, that they will,
No, I meant they were in agreement with these numbers.
in agreement, yes. I mean, they didn't say our numbers were wrong.
No, I was asking, were they in agreement with this printout here?
Yes, but they made it, Dr. Bracey made it clear, yes, he's reviewing this with me. His board doesn't meet till Thursday, and then he will, and I asked him, do you need us to come to your Thursday meeting? And he just said, I'll let you know.
I have a question. When the city and the schools combine the risk management, will the city be taking care of all of the premiums and all of the payouts?
No, as we, and Mrs. Gooden can speak to it, last night as we spoke to it, we were looking at general liability and
I'm looking at general liability, property, and workers' compensation.
those areas.
Say it again, General liability?
Can you come up?
Yes, sir.
Just speak to the insurance fund.
Good evening. The question, we are looking at workers' compensation, general liability, and property.
So you said property.
Yes, sir.
So what about the premiums?
About the premiums, what we're looking to do is for those two, the general liability and property, that would be administered out of the finance department, because that's currently where they actually have it. And workers' comp would be administered out of human resources, where we have a workers' compensation coordinator. How we'd be looking to carry the premiums, it would be carried through, basically doing through internal services. So as we get claims, there'll be charges back to the schools. But as far as the general administration, it'll take place to those respective areas.
So the schools will be paying their claims.
Yes, sir.
So where will those funds be coming from?
They'll come from the joint, they're going to come from the joint fund.
Right,
But they get charged.
but after a while, that's going to dry up.
No, they have to always pay for their
Well, no, you always have to pay for that. It's no different than we do our internal service funds here now, like for, no different than we currently do for workers' compensation now.
So when the school board and city combines and there'll be all premiums and claims being covered by the city?
They are going to be covered, for example, I'll explain it this way. They're administered together by one party, respectively, either human resources for workers' compensation or out of risk management, which is with Ms. Kelly's office as being the finance department chief financial officer. Some years ago, maybe about 8-10 years ago, they used to be administered that way before. So only thing that we're actually doing, we'll be able to track claims. We'll be able to provide schools with their claims utilization. So they'll still be responsible for the cost, but we're looking to actually benefit from the pooled resources in that regards.
And the school system is aware that that's the relationship that this is based on?
Yes, sir.
We can explain it, but there will be further discussion in meetings.
So the 460 is the recurring savings,
Yes.
and the amount they need is also that's the amount they're going to need in the out years to.
In the out years. And the reason for that is because, again, of the funding, the additional funding you would be getting from the state. It's about $600,000 more in state funding with annualizing, whereas 5 months in 18, it'll be 12 months in 19.
Yeah, it just means that they come out to an exact number like that. Question, I guess we probably need to provide something to them that says if there isn't a $460,000 savings in year 3, that you're not going to have to worry about it. That we're going to take it. I think that's their concern. That after year 1 or 2, if I heard the superintendent right last night and listened to them, their concern, his big concern was what happens in the out years. So I guess we need to provide something that says in year 3, if the savings doesn't equal $460,000, $124,000, then we're just safe in that we're going to take care of sort of what Councilwoman Simmons was saying to the superintendent last night. You got us.
The mayor and members of council, in managing the risk management fund, we feel very confident that this funding of it.
I'm not questioning that. What I'm saying is I don't think they have that level of confidence that if it doesn't happen that they're not going to be left with a shortage of funds. I'm not questioning any of this. The numbers look fine, but if we're going to go forward, I think you said they meet on Thursday.
The school board meeting is on Thursday.
Yeah, I think you may need to give them some level of comfort on Thursday to go forward with combine the funds, and I think that would do it, because that seemed to be the big concern that the superintendent had, was what happens in the out years.
Can we memorialize that to a resolution?
Well, let's see where we are as far as individual members of council. Go ahead.
I always want the school board to know that the city council, whether it's this city council or 10 years from now that I have no part of, it stands behind the education of the children of the city of Portsmouth. But somehow I feel if we have come up with a financial instrument that looks to save money, and we've talked for 4 or 5 years that I know of consolidating lots of services to save money so we don't have to raise taxes. And we found a way to do this through this fund. I think it's redundant for us to say, well, we're going to stand behind, we're going to pay for your raises in 2 years now. Every year we go through a budget process to be sure, and we appropriate our quarterly funds to know that, what if all of a sudden the school system decides to spend, $3 million on uniforms for every teacher, and then they don't have money to pay the raises. I can't help that.
That's not what I suggested. That's not what I said.
Well, help me, because I think, I know what you're trying to do, and I am too, but I don't like that idea.
No, we're saying to them, and that's what this is saying, that this $460,000 is a savings that you're going to get every year from risk management. They're
going to appropriate less because they're not going to need as much.
That you're going to use that to pay for your raises, right?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, if in year 3 you only save $60,000, and you need $200,000, we'll find it. I'm not saying what they do with all the other money. I'm just concerned about, because we are basically targeting this money for the savings from this money for the future raises. And if I'm a teacher who's getting a raise this year, I want to know that it's going to be funded. It's going to be funded every year.
Right.
So if for some reason this 460 becomes 260,
That's what I said.
where is the 200 going to come from to make sure that they get their raise year after year? I'm not talking about any other money, just this money right here.
Can't we put that in a resolution to cure?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I hear that.
I do. If we could explain a little, if we could make it a little clearer. The 260,124 is an estimate. We think going forward yearly, that 260 will be higher. This is an estimate. The 200 up here reoccurring is the amount of which the schools have been overfunding in that money they already have there. We're not taking anything, but they still have that 200. That 200 now that they have been overfunding, they will still have it there. So that will be there. And our 261.24 could be 400,000, could be 300,000.
Which
Could be
means
100.
which means
I doubt it would be that low.
well, she's saying she's pretty sure it's going to be higher, which means you shouldn't have a problem saying we're going to take care of it then. That makes my point. It shouldn't be an issue then. But I still think if we're going to make this happen, they're going knowing from what our previous school board relationships have been, unless there's a level of comfort, they're not going to say they're going to combine this fund.
But I have to say this as I read last night in the meeting. Section 2.2 of the city code requires all of the money at the end of the year by law to come back to council.
Nobody knows that better than me, Dr. Patton. All I'm saying is if this estimate is off, what happens? And that's the same question. All monies that are not expended by June 30th supposed to come back to the city. We got that. But if this estimate is off, and you're just saying that you are sure that it's going to be more, if that's the case, then we shouldn't have no problem in giving the assurance that it's going to be okay.
All right, let's go. I guess my question to the manager is, what's the risk of doing that, giving that assurance? What's your objection to it?
It's not that I have an objection. If I look at how working with the schools, and they're coming and every quarterly providing council with an update of, as we did last night, of their funding, and we are managing the fund, I don't see a situation where this, which is reoccurring, will be an issue that we have to memorialize it in a memorandum or an agreement, because we are committed. This is the fund. They are in the fund with us. We're managing the fund. So to step outside to say now we will put it in an agreement, we're going to be the partners in this fund.
Well, and why would we confirm to the school
would-
employees that they're getting a raise and we don't even do that to our own employees?
Well, why wouldn't you have a problem with memorializing it if you're
I'm saying
sure it's going to happen?
That's a good point, too. Let's have
I
one
can't
person
hear.
talk.
Yeah, and I can't. I said everything.
Okay. What did you just say, so that,
Oh, you want to repeat what I just said?
the very last sentence? That's,
I didn't know what it was.
Bill.
Well, the reoccurring savings, the estimated amount that's been overfunded anyway, that's the safety valve, I would think. I mean, I can't, something would be extremely haywire if all of a sudden that's not realized on our end or their end. I would say we deal with it if the problem arises.
That's right.
And that this meeting has been recorded, and that'll be part of the budget process. If we see it's hadn't come to fruition, then we deal with it as part of our budget process. And we'll be able to track that. It's not like on the eve of the budget, we find out what the number is. We get quarterly updates, so we can track it. If we see it's going to be a problem, let's discuss it at that time.
You know,
I mean, I like that. And my question too was, why do we project out 3 years that there are going to be recurring increases for 3 years out when we don't do that on the city side? But I like the figures because in the liaison meeting, they did mention that they needed the $1,079,273 in order to do the 2% raise. So I like how it has been captured in here. So I really don't have a problem with the 3 years. But I say, like last night, I was a city employee for 13 years and we didn't get an increase every year. So I would like to take it year by year when we do the budget.
We brought it back like this because you all asked us to look at the year.
You're good. Let's go around. We know you.
The one thing, I think some people are misunderstanding, it's not giving an additional 2% each year. That's what it costs to continue paying the 2% they get this year.
Sustaining the same
amount.
And I don't, and of course the school board makes their own decisions and their own budget. And the issue here is, what they overfund in risk management, that's their savings, but that's going to be totally up to them to put into their payroll. We can't control what they do, so we shouldn't put in writing that we're going to make up the deficit because they might choose not to put the $200,000 in payroll.
That was
what the trick is, these three are going to be combined now: general liability, workman's comp, and property. So they're not going to be putting the same thing in because we're taking over those three. So it's not apples and apples.
But I think the point that Mr. Clark is making, we must be assured that the lottery proceeds for the state, that as they have shown how they come, that as they come in the out years, that they go into where they have shown us that they are going. Now, we don't have oversight of that, but we cannot have this collaborative and success if we're going to remove the lottery proceeds from the state out of here. and other pieces.
Who talked about doing that?
No, I'm just saying, I'm not saying anyone's talking about doing it, but when he said that we must be assured, we can be assured on our side with the risk management, but we cannot control these funds and where they put them in. But they have to be there in order to support this collaborative effort.
My turn to give my opinion.
Well, are you going to, you've let Mr. Cherry interrupt a couple of times. Are you going to let me
Sure,
speak?
go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. We arrived at this point because there was a level funding that was recommended. And as a last resort, we decided, well, at least give the teachers a raise because there were some possibilities of losing state funding. And so, therefore, that in itself caused some issues of trust because of the fact that we weren't going to fund the schools properly. Now you're asking them to trust you that following this plan that these funds will be available, and you're giving assurances here this evening that it will be available. I've heard comments that we're on television, so we can go back, I guess, to the video and look it back up in future years. I didn't know that's how we did business. But why is it that if we're so sure, why is it that we cannot put this into a resolution that, therefore, that takes away the uncertainty on the part of the school board? I don't understand the reluctance in doing that if that's the case.
I think everybody understands your position. And it sounds like to me that, to use this phrase, there are a lot of uncertainties in budget. It could be anything, and we always have that bridge in front of us. My opinion is that we're doing this in good faith. If we get to the third year and there's, for whatever reason, a need to make an adjustment, we cross that bridge when we get there. I think it's really iffy to put this in a resolution. I think that
Why is that iffy, Asma?
I'm stating my opinion.
No, I'm just asking to explain your opinion. You said it was iffy.
Just too many variables in the third year that could happen. We don't know what the state's going to do. We don't know what the feds are going to do. The whole concept of how local governments fund education may change in 3 years.
Right.
I think that we're doing this in real good faith. And I sense the majority of council saying, if for some reason there is a problem in the second year or the third year, we'll address that when that problem gets here.
To Councilman Whitaker's point, in 2009, I endorsed a resolution on a public safety pay plan. Before we actually authorized the plan, we passed a resolution that said we were going to have a pay plan and made it so important that it became the second only to debt in city government. I think you were here. And Mr. Moody was here. And that was a resolution I thought I was going to stand on the seawall and beat my chest very proudly about. And within months, we adopted the pay plan, and the following year, we didn't fund it. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. So, you know, I hear you, and it probably would make the school board feel better. But I don't want to, with that experience behind me, I don't want to pass a resolution telling school teachers that I'm going to stand behind their pay 3 years down the road. I don't even do that for city employees. We don't know if the president's budget does anything half of what they're talking about in Washington. You know, who knows what's going to happen?
But that's my point. Why make the assurance if you can't stand behind it? And I think they realize that as well. I mean, when I look at the seniors that are here, and we know there were some verbal things that were said, and now we're dealing with that issue with some of their benefits that they want. I just don't think that's a good way of doing business. We're verbalizing commitments, and we expect them to fall in line with it, and they're not.
I think we're beginning to repeat ourselves, and I understand everybody's position, and I think everybody else understands each other. Is that true? Okay. But I think we have a consensus on council that there's sufficient funds in the budget to give 2% for every school employee starting in July, at the start of the year.
July 1. We have 2 more items.
All right, go ahead.
One, Councilman Clark brought forward last evening line of duty benefit recommendation, and we're proposing city staff will draft an ordinance adding full-time paramedics to our listing of eligible positions under the Line of Duty Act, and an ordinance pertaining to this matter will be coming forward in the FY 2018 budget process. Mr. Clark indicated that there were 13. I informed him today that, or this evening, that we have 5 more paramedics that will come on May 8th, and that would take us up to 18 paramedics that would be impacted by this. The next item, Mr. Whitaker called to our attention the item which spoke to general fund vacancies, and in your report back to Public Works session questions on Tuesday, April the 11th, on the second page, which Mrs. White has loaded in your box or you have around you, we responded to the question in regard to the number of vacancies, the amount, and all.
You say you just put it in?
No, this came to you all on April the 11th, but I think today, since we're back, she put it in the box.
What was that amount, the 156?
There were 2.6 million, excludes benefits.
That's the fire and police.
This speaks to...
That was the 69 fire and police position, the 2.6.
Public safety here.
You need time to...
You told me 156, what you were talking
I
about.
was talking about 156.
Okay, then,
It was talking about, if you go up to the next page on the city council meeting.
Page 2.
on the back,
Yeah.
okay.
General fund vacancies, 156 vacancies. That's what
How many vacancies are being carried in the 2018? That was here. Okay.
And as we said, we did say there was 156 vacancies, but that's not how we budgeted for FY18. What we did is we took a percentage of the number of employees that, or the percentage of a turnover. So we took a 5% turnover and budgeted $2.6 million, 5% turnover.
Okay.
So we didn't take 156 vacancies because tomorrow might be 157, the next day it might be 160, the next day it might be 140
Okay.
because people get hired and fired. So we took an average.
My question was, how much does the 156 vacancies represent dollar-wise? Are those vacancies presently in the 2017 budget?
Yes, but
Okay.
they go up and down.
Right.
Okay.
But I asked, how much does 156 represent in the budget?
All right, well, we can go back to that point in time and get a dollar amount, but the next day it might change.
Right, but you're not going to hire 100 employees in one
No,
day.
not 100 employees.
Right, okay. So, I mean, we can get
We'll get that.
We can get an average, and that, which is what I was
you.
saying is that the 5% is about an average of our vacancies.
So let me just ask this. There was a presentation the other day on the living wage, and I thought I understood you to say that we're trying to keep employees at least $30,000.
I can answer that, Ms. Gooden, the HR director.
No, the 216 employees that fall below the $30,000 range. The impact in this budget will move some close to 30, and some may go up to about 31.
Okay.
But
So presently, well, when that memorandum was drafted, there were 156 vacancies. And those vacancies are represented by dollar amounts in the present budget.
in the 17.
In the 17 budget, okay? And so therefore, there are going to be some funds there that will carry over into 2018 because you're still going to be projecting those vacancies.
We have been doing budget transfers, and tonight you will have a budget transfer. So while we have vacancy savings in some areas, we also have overages in others. So we're taking those vacancy savings and applying them to part-time and overtime salaries that were higher.
Right.
So we will not have vacancy savings at the end of FY17, or we're projected to have very small
Right,
amount.
because you're going to transfer them to
Right.
other line items. And so when 2018 kicks in, you're going to have those vacancies funded again in the budget. So that's the point. It
Right.
represents a
And
number.
we are. We're going to have vacancy savings in the budget.
Right. The point is that there are some funds available that we do not have to keep kicking the can down the road on education for our children, and it's in those vacancies, both within the general fund vacancies for those 156, and as well as in public safety. So when we say the money is not there, that's not exactly accurate.
If you look in the budget in FY18, what we did this year was different than what we did in FY17. In FY18, we did a negative $2.6 million for vacancy savings, and then we added and I can't remember the exact dollar amount, for 2.5% increase for salaries for employees, for police and sworn officers retention, and the living wage for employees under 30,000, and that added up to about the same amount in vacancies. So this year in FY18, we're going to have to be very limited of, we can't work overtime, we can't work part-time, we have to stay within our budget because we don't have that vacancy.
So you're not carrying vacancies in the 2018 budget?
No.
Okay. You
We've already
switched it
used
to
those
other
monies
line
to
items.
cover those 2.5% that pay raise.
And you're going to get that point in time number for the 156?
Yes, we'll have that for you.
All right.
We'll have the
Whatever
point in
in the
time
council.
number, but
We can get
What
that for
else
by
do you
tomorrow.
have?
That ends
Well-
our presentation.
I was going to, while we're on that subject, the retirees, I think we were going to get a figure that the amount of employees that had 20 years or more. I understand it's going to take some time
Yes.
to find out. I think there was consensus on the December of $500. So we need to know what that figure would be when you come back with the number of employees 20 years and
I know that we were asked about, and I said and share with you today that working with Mr. Jones, Daniel Jones, HR, and checking with Mr. Ashby in regard to singling out the 20 years or above, and you spoke to the 321, we will come back to you after the budget. But I did not, and council can correct me, or the mayor or anyone, hear that council said that it would automatically be a $500 for.
December?
That's
said-
what I asked for.
Yeah,
It was
that's
500.
Yeah, I was all
500 for
right.
20 plus.
Yeah,
I didn't hear
I
that.
think we had a consensus
I
on
don't
that.
know.
Can we get a?
No, I didn't hear that.
Can we
I
get
didn't
a-
either. I know we're bringing back the information.
Review
I asked for an additional 500 for 20-year plus retirees.
And I
What
was
does
in
that
agreement.
cost?
We don't have that yet, Mayor, because we're, as we said yesterday, we're pulling down through our system those employees who are 20 years or over. And we should have that information within the next, by the end of the week or so. But we've got to get that information and see how many people we
So the consensus is to
have.
get the data, not to do it.
I'd like to know the number.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
need
we'll
to
get
know
that
the
back to
number.
you. And as I said last night, and I said today, we will have that number.
I mean, I can do the math for what it is for 1,006 people.
Yes.
But I don't know whether this is 50 people.
That's what
or
we don't know at
300
this
people
point.
or,
Right.
yeah. No,
We'll
I'd
get
like to
that.
know the
So that
data.
we're all clear.
Yes, that's what I'm bringing back.
The consensus is for her to do the work.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, we have city council liaison to start on my left.
I'm going to give a liaison report from PPIC regarding the Hammerhead crane, and I'll do it once out there.
Okay.
Because it's
For
really more for the
public.
public than for us.
That's good.
And I'll,
Okay.
Ms. Simmons will give the
PPIC.
PPIC. We both were there today, so.
Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority, the interim executive director, Donnell Brown, will be leaving on the 28th of April. Elisa Winston will stand in as interim director until the new person, they've narrowed it down to 2 very good candidates, and they're working up salary options. So once that person comes on board, looking around June, maybe July, that candidate will be here, the new director will be on board. Also, they have passed a resolution with Hutton Associates, who will develop the property over at the Seaboard Crossing property. They had 3 bids from 3 different developers, and Hutton won the bid, and the board approved for them to develop the property that Devaris Corporation had out for RFP. So look to hear more information about that right there at the old Jeffrey Wilson site coming up soon.
From the EDA, they had another briefing last Tuesday last week from DeVaris as well on the number of properties that they have out there for solicitation. And you'll be happy to know that there's great interest in a lot of properties, particularly Victory Boulevard, the properties across from the Golden Skillet. Yeah, across from Golden Skillet, and as well as some of the properties in Victory. We did also find out that the group home that was coming to Victory Village is no longer coming to Victory Village. Autumn Care is no longer coming to Victory Village. Those were the highlights to me. But there's several properties, and the good part about this briefing was there's a lot of interest in coming to Portsmouth with the many of the properties. So we just need to make sure that we're in a good position to move when people come, which is why it's important that we get this zoning ordinance done sooner rather than later, because as they're coming to Hampton Roads, they're looking at not just Portsmouth and Hampton Roads, but all the Hampton Roads. And if we're not in a position to go, they just go across the city lines. That leaving members.
well, and the DeVaris report has been emailed to all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it.
So you might want to take a look at it, but you'll see that all the properties out there that actively soliciting the EDA is to bring business to the city of Portsmouth, and there is a lot of interest at this time. We just need to make sure we capitalize on it.
Well, one of the boards, Hampton Roads Regional Jail Authority, I was not able to attend that because I was attending our wonderful State of the City address, but everybody did get a copy of the email from the board. The other one is the Parking Authority, which I did attend that one, and one of the things that's still ongoing is the new County Street Garage. It's in the programming phase of the design. We're looking at that, and a couple of the issues that came up we discussed at the most recent meeting was Court Street, basically from the library between High Street and County Street. Is going back, we're looking at putting 2-hour parking signs because we're having individuals that are parking there all day long, so we don't have turnover for people to go to the businesses and to the library. And having a similar issue in the Water Street Garage, where they're having problems with basically monthly rental individuals. They're parking in the visitor spaces, and it's not a time space, so we can't get visitors into the garage. So we're looking at changing those visitor spots to a 2-hour spot, so we do get turnover, so they're not being used up by the people that are paying monthly rates, and we can't get visitors and patrons to businesses in there. And that's the 2 issues from the most current meeting.
Yeah, just, well, we've already heard from the school board liaison. But I do have a procedure question, just want to make sure following the right procedure. Is there a need to get a consensus from council before we decide to meet with individual entities in the city? For example, if I just decide I need to meet with the superintendent and go over the budget, does that take council consensus?
If I want to respond, no. I mean, it's your right to do that.
Oh,
I mean,
well, no, I just want to make sure.
On your own behalf.
Right.
You're not, no, I mean,
So if we want to meet with individual departments within the city, that takes a council consensus to do that.
well, you need to do that through the city manager.
Right.
That's understand code.
But certainly, if you want to meet with the regional jail administrator, I mean, you can do that.
But that would be as an individual person, not as a council. That's what I'm saying. You need council consensus to do that.
Correct.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because we have school board liaisons, and you called a meeting with the superintendent, and that was not a council consensus, and that's what I'm trying to find out procedurally. How are we going to do this? Will it be that you're going to call meetings with the superintendent, or is it for the liaisons to do that? Because that meeting that was conducted the other day, the liaisons were not involved in that. I don't think. Yeah, I wasn't involved. And
for your information, I did not request the meeting. That may be news to you.
Okay.
Okay. I did call the chairman. He was on spring break. The next thing I know, we're having a meeting. So I did not call the meeting. I did not ask for that meeting.
The school board called that meeting.
I did not ask for that meeting.
So Dr. Patton called the meeting.
I didn't call the meeting.
No.
He's saying, I did not call the meeting. The mayor didn't call the meeting. The meeting was set up through the chair.
Okay. Also, just one more issue that I think Ms. Simmons sent us. Was it an email of an employee? It was a Facebook post. Was that?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that. We're going to get some legal advice from council, because if we're going to start sending city employees emails or Facebook posts, how are we determining which city employees' Facebooks you're going to look into and send to council? Is there some guidance we can get on that? Because
that's a good point. We're at council liaison reports. If you would hold that for a second, let's finish the liaison reports. I'll give my report. The three organizations that need to approve the memorandum of understanding to do the environmental study for the third crossing of Hampton Roads, that is the crossing that comes off of 664, goes across the north end of Craney Island and under the Elizabeth River over to Norfolk, with a connector that comes on the east side of Craney Island to 164. Is making its way through the planning district, the TPO, which is the planning organization for transportation, and then it goes to HR TAC. And this is important for the city. There's $7 million plus another $4 million in contingency that has been allocated for that study. So it's important that we be part of that memorandum. We, on our request, put language in there that there's not be a study that's done in the blind without input from the local governments involved, which happen to be Portsmouth for sure, Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Suffolk. So that's the status of that. Now, any other liaison reports? All right, now let's address your concern.
Right, just concerning getting some type of legal opinion on going into employee emails or Facebooks and that information coming through council members, because I didn't think we were supposed to be dealing at the employee level. And I believe there was a concern about pay. And then, Dr. Patton, you sent us an email in regard to that.
If I could share with you, and both the Human Resources working with the city attorney is developing a social media policy. Okay. I was contacted that there was a Change.org fund created, and that with that fund being created, there was a write-up in regard to issues as it pertains to funding sources for I think it was particularly for eligibility workers. I guess many people across the city saw it or commented on it. That in turn, so that whether you saw it or who saw it, it was being discussed. So as I tried to get a head up to council members to know that this is out there, as it pertains to freedom of speech and being in the domain of a request for a funding source, something that we have never, ever had before, but I wanted you all to know that what was the level of concern when it came to eligible workers and where they actually were in payment compared to other 7 cities. But that is the first time anything like that of the city. Is the city pushing people out there to try to fund something? No. Did the city have anything to do with the Change.org being set up through an employee? No. So that was information for you all to know. It has never happened. It's nothing that we could do about it if, in fact, a person put something out there. So that was just what I would say, a heads up, as I try to give when different things come up like that. But we will have a policy, hopefully within. It's taking time, but they're working it.
Well, as far as on the council side, is it a council member that can bring up Facebook or any other social media information on an employee and submit it to the city manager? Are we overstepping? I just want to make sure.
I had gotten information on that from others that it called to my attention that it was out there.
Right. Well, I'm just asking, if the attorney, so that...
I will certainly take a look at that issue, and I will get back with council. If I have any need to clarify the question, I'll follow up with you all and provide you all an opinion with regard to that.
Okay. We have a need to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter.
I move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.23711A.1 for the purpose of discussing and considering the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of appointees specifically regarding council appointees.
So we have a motion. We have a second. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg? Yes. Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Rowe?
Yes. And if everyone would please leave.
There's some violation that a council member's doing at the state.
Right. I know what you're saying. In light